Hey everyone, let's talk about all the things I read in October. And I had a massive reading month. A lot of these are short, and you'll see why. But I read 13 things. And some of these I had started in September and then finished in October, but still, I had a huge reading month. And part of the reason I had so many is that I do have some middle grade or shorter books in here. And one of the things was that I had a day where I was like, I'm going to see how much I can read in one day. And so I pulled out a bunch of short things, which happened to be middle grade. And in one day I finished 4 books. So that was part of this, that I had like 4 really short books I read in one day. And I'm going to talk about those first. And then I'll go through everything else I read this month and kind of the ones I liked the least to the ones I liked the most. So in the day I did my 24-hour readathon. The way I did it is I just like from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed, I didn't like try to stay up later. I was just like, in a normal day, how many things can I read? I listened to 2 of these and read physically 2 of these. One was a picture book. So this is one that a lot of people have talked about, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse by Charlie Macri. Is it Macri or Maxi? I can't, the main problem I have with this book is I can't read the font. I have a hard time with this font. Yeah, so yes, the art is nice. The storyline is nice. It's just it's kind of almost like a book of quotes, like we're following all of these animals and this boy, and kind of, it feels like just a feel good, like, oh, how we get along and all this stuff. So just a little like kind of children's book or life book, but I have a hard time with the font, I have to say. So I didn't rate this one because it's just kind of like, oh, you could pick it up and like kind of have like a little uplifting thing that you could read in one page. So that's all I have to say about that one. That one was short. And then I read The Tiger Rising by Kate DiCamillo. It's just one that I love this author, but this is definitely my least favorite by her. And it just didn't really pull me in that much. I've loved a lot of her books, and this, yeah, just not a huge fan. It is short though, so like I ended up listening to this one and I think it was like a 2-hour audiobook, so went by really quick. And this is following a boy who his mom has recently died, so he and his dad are living in a hotel, and I think his dad like does maintenance for the hotel, and he's at a new school. Everybody kind of picks on him. There's a lot of bullying, which is part of the reason why I didn't love this book. I have a hard time when there's a lot of bullying in middle grade books, and it was so much. And then he meets this new girl who moved to town who kind of like doesn't care what other people think. And so even though when people are trying to bully her, she like doesn't care. And then they find this tiger in the woods, like in a cage. And it's just kind of their friendship and whatever's going on with this tiger. And yeah, I just didn't really fully understand the point of it by the time we got to the end. And I didn't really care so much about anything that was happening. So it was like 3 stars. I mean, I think Kate DiCamillo still like does well of like creating characters and moments, but overall I didn't love it. And then I read Wait Till Helen Comes by Mary Donning Hahn, because you know, it's October. Why not read something really spooky? This is like a ghost story. And if it says right on the cover, a ghost story. And this was fine. I think I ended up giving this 3 stars. I think maybe if I had read this when I was in middle school or like 6th grade, I would have loved it, because I was really into like R.L. Stine and all those kind of like creepy, ghosty kind of paranormal stories. But I didn't read this back then, even though I think this was like written back then, right? Wasn't this like written in the 80s? Yeah, so I could have read this as a kid, and I wish I had, because I think I would have really liked it back then, because that was my vibe. But as an adult, it just wasn't that scary or that interesting. It's like a typical like ghost story. But if you have kids that like kind of creepy things, I do think that like she writes well of like that age appropriate level with scary stuff for that age. So we're like following a girl and her family who, they're a blended family. So her mom has recently gotten married, and that man has a child as well. So like, it's like, you know, having a new stepdad and a new stepsister, and they move to this like church, this old abandoned church that has a graveyard in the back. And the little girl, like the stepsister, starts like making friends with a ghost, and maybe it's malicious and all this stuff. So I think it would be fine if you were of the age. So I would more recommend it for kids than for adults, unless you just like a little ghost story that goes by fast. I mean, this is another one that I think I read in like an hour and a half, 2 hours. Like it goes by really quick if you just want a little ghost story. And then the one that was the highlight of the day was My Life with the Chimpanzees by Jane Goodall. It's obvious I picked this up because Jane Goodall, we just lost her at the beginning of October. And so I remembered I had this on my shelves because I was going to read it as part of my child's homeschool, and then we just never got around to it. And I was like, I'm gonna read it, and it was beautiful. 5 stars. It's great if you have kids and want to share it with them, but also good for adults to read too. It just is written at a level where I think kids could easily read it as a biography or autobiography. So it is on a kid level, but it's just nice to like kind of follow her life, and and she's narrating it, so you just get to hear her talk about how she ended up, you know, studying chimpanzees. And it was just like so amazing to think about when she was like first starting out studying the chimpanzees, and that she was just out there. She's like, I don't want anybody with me. The only way I can really get them to trust me and enough to just do their thing and me be able to observe it, that I have to just be around them by myself, quiet. And the patience that she must have had to just be able to sit there all day watching them and, you know, not making noise or not like trying to interfere or anything, and just like being calm and waiting for weeks and weeks and year before the chimpanzees like would allow her close enough. Yeah, just the patience this woman had, and the amazing things she did for science. And I didn't realize it was her that discovered that chimpanzees use tools like, you know, when they use the straws to like pull out termites and stuff. I didn't realize that was her that discovered that. Like, you know, there was a lot of stuff I learned, and it was just kind of beautiful to have her reading a little bit about her life. So I'd recommend this one. I know she's also written like longer memoirs or autobiographies that are targeted for adults, but if you wanted something just to put in your ears for a couple hours, I ended up listening to this on Spotify. So if you do have Spotify Prime and you get like audiobooks from that, this one was only like 3 hours long, the audiobook. So it was lovely. Those are the things I read in one day. And now on to just kind of the things I was reading throughout the month. And we'll start with a book I didn't rate. And actually the first 2 books here are part of a thing. My daughter is in 5th grade, and she does what's called Bob Books, which is Battle of the Books. So they have certain books that they read or are assigned to read during the year. And then at the end of the school year, they'll do like a quiz bowl around those books. And I told her this year that I would read all the books with her so we could discuss them, kind of help her like remember about it, and just so I know what she's reading and can talk with her and about what she's interested in. So some of these are those books, and I'll point those out. And one of them this was fine, but I didn't rate it because it was more of a short story. This is Resist, A Story of D-Day by Alan Gratz. And I've heard really good things about this author. He always does like historical fiction. And this is like a short story that's part of a bigger, so I think there's another one called Allies. It's like a full-length novel, and that this is we're following one of the characters from that in just like a moment. And so this is really short. I think it's like 50 pages long. I think it was. Yeah, like 50 pages long with like really big spots. Like the chapters are like 2 pages long, so there's a lot of blank space. So this went by super quick. I think the audiobook was like an hour. I didn't end up listening to the audiobook. I ended up just reading it. And yeah, it's just like on D-Day, this girl who is a spy, she's French, Algerian, and she is a spy for the French, and kind of she's trying to hide from the Nazis at the same time as like the Allies are all dropping in to for that moment of D-Day. So just a moment of what's happening to her on that day. So good, but I didn't really know how to rate it because it was so short and over so quickly. I think I would be interested in reading Allies, which is the bigger book about D-Day that like had several different characters. Her being one of them. I would like to kind of hear her whole story. And then another Bob book that was one of my least favorite this month was Lost Library, which my daughter is very offended because she loved this. But I have read a few books by Rebecca Stead and Wendy Mass, and I've just never loved any of them. I think there's something about their writing that you know, some kid that maybe as a kid I would have loved it more. My daughter loved this book. I just find it okay. I gave it 3 stars. It was okay. I don't regret reading it, and I enjoyed talking to her about it because it's a mystery and kind of like, ooh, did you guess what is going to happen next? So I enjoyed talking about it, but probably wouldn't have read it on my own. This is about a library had burnt down and now burned down. And now it's kind of like things that are happening in the town after that. We're following kind of a cat that lived in the library and misses the library, and so they set up like a little free library, and the cat is protecting it as like his library now. There's a little boy who obviously was not alive back when the fire had happened, but he's like fascinated about what happened with the fire and all that. And so we're following a few different characters, and yeah, it was fine. It's about libraries, so that was great, and everybody in the town was really invested in building up this little library and seemed really excited to have a library again in the town, so there was really good points of it. It just was kind of average for me. I didn't really feel connected to any of the characters. And then another 3-star, my other 3-star that I had was First Frost by Sarah Addison Allen, and this is the sequel to now what it's called, Garden Spells, and I love Garden Spells. It's like a 5-star, one of my favorite books of all time. And this is a sequel, but it just doesn't have the magic that Garden Spells has. This is following a family of women who all have kind of special abilities and just following their life. But the first one was more of a romance, and I just felt more invested learning about the family, where at this point I was like, okay, I don't really care exactly what's going on in this one. We're following more the teenage daughter of one of the sisters, and I wasn't really invested in her storyline and her romance, or it wasn't really necessarily romance, but like kind of her relationship that she was building. And yeah, I didn't care so much about what was happening. So it's 3 stars. I still enjoy Sarah Addison Allen's writing, but this is definitely not a favorite like Garden Spells is. Okay, and then I had a bunch of 4 stars. One that was a newer release is Forget Me Not by Stacey Willingham. I've never read anything by this author, and I just wanted a quick, thriller, and I was like, oh, I'll pick up a new one. I've heard good things about this author, and this was interesting. It kept me interested the whole time. I was invested in what was going to happen. I don't think I'll remember this in a few months, but 4 stars means it was solid at the time. I enjoyed it. It's not going to be my favorite of all time, but worthwhile to read and be entertained. And this is like, a kind of a case of like going back to your hometown type of thing, sort of. We're following a woman whose sister had died a long time ago, back when they were kids. Like the sister was a teenager. They had a big age gap. So the sister was a teenager and she was like 11 or something when her sister had gone missing, presumed dead. And she gets to a point where I can't remember if something else happens, like maybe another girl goes missing or something. But she's at like a down part in her life where she has lost her job and she doesn't really know what to do. So she decides to go back to her hometown and kind of discover what happened to her sister. And her sister was working at an orchard, and so she decides to work at the orchard so she can kind of be in the place that her sister was in her last year or whatever and connect to her. And we just kind of like follow her sleuthing. She's a journalist, so it kind of makes sense that she knows how to like kind of figure it out, what happened and how to interview people and research. So we're following that. The only thing I don't love about this, which I've had a couple thrillers this year have done this, where somebody finds something like a diary or a journal or sets of paperwork or something from the past, and instead of just sitting down and reading it, they like, oh, I'll read a chapter now and then I'll put it down and then I'll read it. And I'm like, if you had just read the whole thing, then you probably would not have put yourself in the thrilling situation that is going to be happening or whatever. And so it feels a little too plot convenience, and I've read about 3 this year that have done that same thing, where I'm like, really? If you really wanted to know what happened to this person, wouldn't you sit down and read that document or whatever book that you found that has possibly the answers? So that was my only like 1 thing about it. But I think that this author actually did better of like why she didn't have time to read it all in one moment. So it helped a little bit that I felt like there was some reasons why it was stretched out. So it was entertaining if you just want entertainment. Same thing with this one. This Spells Love by Kate Robb. I wanted something kind of witchy and October-y romance, and I thought this would be that because there is a spell in here. It is definitely not witchy. Does not need to be read in the fall, but it was fun. It was fine. It's another one where I'll probably forget it in a few months, but in the moment, it was entertaining. We are following a woman who has recently broken up with her long-term boyfriend, and she's like really down the dumps about it. And she and her best friend is a man, and then her sister and her aunt get together and do a spell so that she forgets her ex. But the problem is, in doing that, she met her best friend the same night that she met her ex. And so now her best friend doesn't know who she is as part of the spell. And so it's kind of like living in an alternate reality where her best friend doesn't know her anymore. And she's like, how do I get back to my life? Because I miss my best friend, and maybe there's more to him, you know. So it's like a romance, but it's like one of those, like, I don't know. I always feel like there's a bit of a power dynamic in these kind of ones where it's either like going back in time or an alternate reality where something is different, where our main character knows like everything about the other person, but that other person's like they're just meeting them. It always feels like a bit of a power dynamic that's weird because she's like, he's my best friend. It's like, well, actually in this timeline, he's not your best friend. He doesn't even know you. And so it's like she's using the things she knows about him to get him to like her again. And that feels a little manipulative, kind of like Groundhog Day. I feel like a little manipulative, but I think with this kind of plot, you have to look that over and just go with the vibes and the whole like spell thing. And they were a cute couple, and I enjoyed their friendship and everything. So yeah, it was fun. It was a good time. And then a book that my daughter and I read together that wasn't one of her ones for school, it was just one we were listening to, is Seraphina and the Black Cloak by Robert Beatty. And this is one that, you know, sometimes middle grade novels can be age appropriate and still be really scary. And that was this one. Like, I would say it's inappropriate. I wouldn't necessarily give it to like any 8 to 12-year-old. I would, because like my younger daughter is like almost 8, and she would be scared to death of this. But my 10-year-old and I really enjoyed it, and she said she wasn't scared at all. We're already on the 3rd book in this series now, and we're really enjoying it. And this is like taking place, I don't know, I think it's in the 1800s. Maybe early 1900s, something in the past. It's historical fiction about this girl, Seraphina, who lives in the basement of the Biltmore Estate, which is a real place in North Carolina, right? And her dad works for the estate, and she kind of like, nobody knows she exists. She's just living in the basement, kind of is catching rats is kind of like her job or whatever, you know, like what she does with her time to kind of help the estate, but nobody really knows that she's there. And then something happens. This man with a black cloak comes, and she sees something really terrifying happen. It doesn't say on the back, so I just want to make sure I didn't say anything. She sees something terrifying happening with this man with the black cloak. So Seraphina is like, I'm the only one that's seen this. I have to make myself known to the other people of the estate, even if it risks my like life, because her dad won't tell her why she's a secret or whatever. So she's trying to learn about herself and her past, but then also try to find out who this man with the black cloak is and how to stop him. And it is legitimately scary. There are children going missing, which is put on the back. It's like children vanishing one by one. And so there are legitimately scary moments in this and some intense moments, but it was still age appropriate, and it was really entertaining. I really liked Seraphina as a character and her like bravery and kindness, even though she's grown up in this very strange way, and she could be definitely more like you know, like protecting herself instead of like helping others, but she's always like helping others and trying to like help the whole estate and the people that she becomes friends with the nephew of the owner of the Biltmore Estate, and they kind of develop a friendship, which is really sweet to see. So this was really good. 4 stars. I enjoy it. I think as an adult, people would enjoy this too. If you're somebody that likes reading middle grade and you like a little spookiness, a little bit of mystery, yeah, it was fun. This is really fun for my daughter and I to read together because there's definitely some like reveals along the way and like us guessing. And actually my daughter figured out more of them than I did. And it was like really fun to read together. And then a book that I was reading for series September but did not finish until October was A Sky Beyond the Storm by Sabas Tahir. This is the last book in the Ember in the Ashes series, and it just took me a little longer to read this one. We have been reading them one every month for a read along I was doing with Krista from Books and Jams and Sarah from Sarah's Nightstand, and I was just behind and didn't get to go to the live show, but I was like, I still want to finish the series, and I finished this one. And so I can't really say much about this book, but this is definitely a series that was intense in a lot of times, but like really pulls you in with the characters, had really great messages in the end, and really like I was so invested in so many of these characters by the end and like what was going to happen. And this is not a book that shies away from having stakes, and so I was like really nervous about all my characters in this one. It's not just even the main characters, there's so many side characters that you get like invested in their story and all that. And like I said, the themes are really great. This one still holds up and is an excellent read. So I would still recommend this one if you have it on your shelves. And then I have like a group that I do like a book challenge with every month. And one of the prompts we had for October was to read a book that's the lowest rated on your TBR. And I was looking at my physical TBR, and the lowest rated book I had was Hera by Jennifer Saint. And I was really sad about that because I love Jennifer Saint. All of the books that I read by her have either been 4 or 5 stars. She writes Greek myth retellings, always centered on women. And I've loved every book. I bought this one special from the UK so I could get this like beautiful paperback, which has like peacocks on the end pages, and it's just so pretty. And then after I bought this book, I saw that the ratings were so low, and they continued to be low the whole time I was like owning this book, and it made me like not want to pick it up. But I was like, but I've always loved everything by Jennifer Saint. Like, what is going on? And I was really interested to read about Hera because I think she's kind of a hard topic for Greek myth because she is a woman who is a woman hater and has a history of treating other women badly in Greek mythology. So I was like, how is Jennifer Saint going to represent her? And I ended up loving this book. Not necessarily 5 stars, but definitely 4, 4.5, like really close. Not my favorite by Jennifer Saint, but definitely a solid 4 stars or more. I really enjoyed it. And I found myself, sympathizing with Hera in a lot of ways, but then also being frustrated with her choices in other ways. And I didn't know how they were going to end this, how she was going to end this story, but I thought it was a perfect way to wrap it up. It was great. So this one, we're just following Hera, the queen of the gods, the wife of Zeus, from kind of the fight with the Titans. So, like in Greek mythology, the Titans ruled first, and then Zeus and the Olympians defeated the Titans. So we start this book at the battle with the Titans, and then follow Hera as she becomes Zeus's wife and becomes the goddess of marriage and the queen of the gods, and like obviously her philandering husband and all the things he does, and how she like retaliates against the women instead of against Zeus, and figuring out her power and like revenge and all this stuff. I found it really fascinating to follow and really enjoyable. It also gives kind of an overarching view of Greek mythology. So if you're someone that just kind of wants to feel a whole arc of Greek mythology, that's what this is too, from the eyes of Hera. And I enjoyed it. I do not know why it has such a low rating. I think some of the ratings, some people were saying that it was too overarching, but I think that kind of has to be to follow Hera and her story. You have to kind of see what leads her to make her choices and all that. And other people said they didn't really feel connected to Hera as a character, and I don't agree with that at all. I think I knew from the very beginning who she was and what was like motivating her to her actions, and each step of the way, what was happening that led her to do her next step. I thought I totally understood her throughout the book. So yeah, I love this. I would recommend any book by Jennifer Saint. I've enjoyed them all. Okay, and then my last one is a 5-star, which was the first Bob book that my daughter and I read together, which is Insignificant Events in the Life of a Cactus by Dusty Bowling. And I'd heard other people talk about this, like every year during middle grade March, I hear people rave about this book. For the last couple of years, I've heard people rave about it, and it was really good. It was definitely, I would highly recommend this if you just like only read a couple middle grades a year. Make this one of them. It's really good. It's about a girl who was born with no arms, and she had grown up her whole life in one school, and so everybody knew about her, knew like, you know, how she does things, you know, how she like eats with her feet and like all this stuff. So she's always felt like people included her. And then her parents, like, you know, her dad gets a new job and she has to move. So this is the first time she's starting at a new school where everybody is going to be staring at her and like making comments, or, you know, maybe not understanding how she does things, or maybe finding things are gross, like eating with your feet is gross, but she's like, that's how I do it. Like that's how also would I. And so I thought it was really great, like following her, but then also her friendship. She makes friends with a boy who has Tourette syndrome, and learning more about that and their friendship. And then just like being a middle schooler, some of the normal things that every middle schooler deals with, just following that. And I love that our main character, she just has a lot of gumption and just has like so much belief in herself and her abilities. And I just really enjoyed it. And reading this with my daughter and be like, you know, seeing the confidence our main character has, and being like, you can be confident in what you are good at and what you do, and other people will see that. And so I really enjoyed this. And so if you don't read very many middle grade contemporaries and you just want a good recommendation, I think this one was an excellent one. And that's it. That is everything I read in October. Sorry, this video was very long because 13 books is a lot of books, but almost all good ones. I only had a couple 3 stars, and those I still was glad to be reading those with my daughter or whatever. So overall, a really great month. I've had an overall really good reading year, and I think it's because I'm kind of picking out what I really want to read, and also letting things go if I'm not loving them, just like not finishing them. And so most of the stuff I'm finishing are 4 and 5 stars. So I've been pretty happy with my reading year this year, and let's continue that for the next couple months. And I will see you next time. Bye.